And welcome back, everyone. Let's continue from where we left off. I'm going to start focusing on some of the other props, especially like these interior things, and maybe the wheel, and I'm going to focus on detailing some of the crates on the outside. Let's focus on the wheel, as this one is probably one of the more simpler ones. I don't feel like we need to do too many things to the actual wheel. I do, however, feel like the outer border edges of the actual metal frame for the wheel, we do need to have some sort of a bevel edge. So I'm going to go ahead, select those corners, maybe the ones on the inside as well. Have a look at those, select them, and then apply a quick bevel to that. I'm going to hit Shift right click bevel. It's going to give us a nice fraction. We can either change it through the on-screen display or through here. One little tip or thing that I would like to mention with the pop-up menu is that you can obviously use the slider, and then you can hold down control to be more specific about the incremental changes. But if you type in a value, they somehow change the settings that you can't use the full stop as a space in between, especially in the numpad area. If you try to use that delete key or the dot key, it does not take that. You have to add a comma, which will add the decimal space to the fractions. Now, if you change it through the outliner, the channel box, it does take it, however. So something worth mentioning to consider for future use. Excellent. I think that looks pretty good from a distance. That just gives a little bit of highlight on the edges of the wheel. That seems to give us plenty of detail to work with. The inner wooden beams, I'm going to leave them as is. We don't need to bevel those. So I'm happy with the wheel. Let's continue with more of the internal details, especially this, let's call it a chest or some sort of a box with a lid that we will have on top. In here, it doesn't really look like too much. Let's bring up the full view. There we go. We can see more details. It definitely looks like some sort of a chest lid that goes on top and something stacked on top of it with maybe a little handle on the side and a keypad in the front. So let's have a look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate this guy. I'm going to hold down Control, press F1, F to frame that, and let's jump in and get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to face mode and select some of the faces at the top. I'm going to go to Shift Extrude, and I'm going to pull this out, just give us some sort of a lid cover. And I'm going to pull these up using the normal move tool as well, just to give it a little bit more height. And then I think we need to add maybe some side panels. And before we do that, I'm just going to jump to the modeling toolkit, add a slice through there, double click the loop, use my scale tool and straighten that out. That way we have a nice clean straight line, and then these edges I will try and pull back a little bit more like that and that. And the next thing that I want to do is separate this from what we have here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is select these faces, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to hold on Shift and full stop, and that's going to grow my selection. I'm going to do that twice, so we have that whole section right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to Mesh, and then say Extract. I think it's Edit Mesh, Extrude. Under the faces there, that's the option that I'm looking for, Extract. What this will do is split these into two objects. Two shapes rather, and then we can tweak them as we prefer or as we like. I do feel like we need to maybe play with some of the details and the width profile of this lid. So I'm going to go ahead and do an extrude on that, just to thicken that up a bit more. And it's rounding out in all directions. It might be something that we want, it might not. I do feel that this might give us a little bit more detail and rounding on the edges. I'm just going to jump to the scale tool and pull this in just ever so slightly, something like that. Wonderful. From here, I'm going to try and straighten out these planes, which they are, which is fine. And I'm going to keep it very simple. I don't want too many loops. In fact, this edge over here might be a bit too much. So we can go ahead and do a target weld and jump to edge component mode and just drag this one down and drag the back one down as well, and that will collapse it to a single plane over here. Great. I'm liking that. I'm happy with the results. It's very clean, very simple. And let's jump to the next section. Over here, I think we're going to have some extra details in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the faces, and in fact now I'm going to do the split polygon tool and split it down this section, and that will give me faces on either side that I can then go ahead and do an extrude on. I'm going to use my thickness to pull this in, to give it some space, to give it that profile that I want. And then on the outside, what I'm going to do is just bevel these and use a fraction to kind of pull this out a little bit more, just like that. And then the inner piece faces, I will also do the same thing. I'm just going to use my scale tool to pull both of these in like that. And that's going to give us enough detail for us to represent that offset. Furthermore, we can look at adding the little keypad lock in the front. Let's just see which side is front. This side is front. So I'm going to grab both of these again, shift, or rather control 1 to isolate again. This edge I want to pull back in like that. In fact, before we do that, let's isolate just this object so we can have a look at what's going on here in the inside. We have way too many faces on the inside, which is kind of counterproductive, as they are absolutely doing nothing for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this inner section, this one, pretty much all of these. I'm going to shift select them, make sure you've got all of them. I'm going to hit delete, and then once I have that, I'm just going to go and fill the hole on the inside. I'm going to grab the inner edge, border edge. If you can't make out which one is the border edge, you can just rotate your object and see which one is the open edge, or you can turn on the display of the border edge. A quick way to do that is shift right click. You'll see polygon display, and then you can turn on the border edges, not the texture border edge. This is related to UVs. You want to be using border edge as is. That's going to thicken out the border edge just ever so slightly, and you can go ahead and tweak the thickness if you really want to, but for now I'm pretty happy with that. So now looking at this object, when you see the thick border, you're actually looking at an open mesh. So then we can go ahead and do the shift right click and then say fill hole, and that will close it up or bridge the corners of the open border. And then lastly, we can just go ahead and connect these across. I still feel, however, these might be a little bit too much. We can just go ahead and reduce that a little bit later. For now, I'm happy with that. Low poly counts is the key to this to the success of this model. And for this, we will then go ahead and create the keypad here in the front. It's going to be a very simple shape object. In fact, what I'm going to do is steal some faces from the existing mesh. Just use this one. We can do a shift right click, and then we can say duplicate face. What that will do is make a duplicate of that existing face and automatically extract it as a new shape, which means if I go back to object mode and I select this one, you'll see that face that was duplicated is not selected. So that's very, very useful if you want to quickly steal something from one part of the model and reuse it on something else. Then I'm just going to go again, modify center pivot. I'm going to scale this up a bit, something along the lines of that, because this is a keypad lock or padlock. I'm just going to morph it and shape it into something similar. So I'm going to have that selected. I'm going to do an extrude on it, pull that out, something like that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and grab all the corners, bevel them, make a nice offset. And for the sake of visual interest, we will shape these a little bit more manually. I'm just going to divide this right in half by doing selecting this edge. I'm going to redo that again. Select the edge, control right click, to edge loop, utilities, and then to edge loop, and then split it in half. It cuts it right in half. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to use our symmetry tool, set to topology, to then go and grab the one side. And it seems like it doesn't work along the topology axis unless we select a single edge, not a whole edge loop. There we go. Now we can see it's active, it's reading the object shape, and we have the symmetry working. Just going to pull this out a little bit more, something like that, just to give it some interesting profile. And if you have a look here, I might want to thicken this up a little bit more, so I'm going to go ahead, go to faces, and grow this selection all the way around. Pull this out a little bit more. That's looking pretty good. And then finally we're going to do some sort of the metal rod using a simple cylinder. Let's hit F2 frame to that cylinder. We can see it's quite a dense model. In fact, let me zoom out quite far enough. And then we can adjust that and place it where we want. Hit F2 frame it. It's almost there. I'm going to hold, select this one, shift select that one, and then jump to our align tool, and then use this one to center that. Once we have that, we can then go ahead and align it to that axis as well. Press enter, and that's perfectly oriented to where we want. I think I might have shifted my camera. I'm going to readjust that until it snaps back into position. And over here, let's go to the polytorus, reduce the sections. Let's do 8 sections and maybe 5 sections. That looks good. It's divided nicely in half, and I'm going to reduce the radius to make it thinner. But I'm going to increase the radius like this. Rotate that along the z-axis until it's 90 degrees facing where we want. Something like that. I'm going to get it stuck in there. And in fact, let's make it a little bit wider, a bit thicker. Radius, increase that as well. That looks good. The only thing that I do want to do is now delete the unnecessary faces for this object, which will be these over here. Delete, delete, and then finally, I do like these. I'll keep them as is. We can just go ahead and combine these together. Mesh, combine, and we are done with that shape. I'm going to go back again, modify center pivot. Realign that, and bring that closer, bring it up, something like that. And that looks pretty good for a little keypad. keeps things mostly aligned. You could go ahead and add like the actual metal rods to where this will be attached to keep these two parts together, but it's really not necessary because it's such a small detail object and it's hidden inside of something else. In fact, even looking at it from here, it's very difficult to see that keypad, so we might want to over exaggerate certain things, but just scaling them up a bit more. This object might be a bit too close, so I'm just going to move it out of position, and from the read of the scale of our keypad lock, I'm pretty happy with what it looks like from this angle and position. I'm going to call that one done for now. We can jump to the next piece. We'll grab this and we can go ahead and play with our crate box. If we bring up the full reference, we can have a look. There's a little crate underneath the actual hut or a little shack, and it looks like a few planks running this way and maybe one or two this way and then one going across. So let's go and have a look at how we can do that. Very simple. It's going to be primitive duplications. In fact, we can even use the existing model to do that. So what I'm going to do is take this model and I'm going to do the duplicate faces right off of it, which gives us the ability to pull planks from the existing face that's already aligned to it. And let's select this face and shift, right click, extrude, pull this up, and with that shift D, move, and then shift D again, sticking over a little bit, which I'm perfectly fine with. And I'm going to duplicate this, one more time, Control D, move that across. In fact, I'm going to do a modify center pivot. I will show you guys how you can create a quick shortcut to make the center pivot and freeze transform tools very accessible and easy to use, so that you don't have to keep on going to a menu. You can either create a little shortcut button you can click, or we can have a key combination on the keyboard. I'll show you guys how we can do that as well. So that looks good. Maybe something like that. Duplicate that across to the opposite side as well, using the Control D. And then finally, I'm just going to grab this internal box and scale it down so it has more space, volume on the inside. And finally, I'll just grab one of these, duplicate, align it to the center, rotate that around. You can see now it's deforming, and the reason for that is because this mesh was the original for all of these planks. It still considers this object scale, rotation, and translation, but because it's now a duplicated face, this one has new translations and rotations. So it's trying to remember the old shape, and it's warping and distorting. So the reason is purely because this object is still remembering the old transforms. So if we go ahead and select all the objects within that group from that original duplicated or extracted mesh, if we hit Shift Alt D, it's going to clear out that transform. And then if it still warps, all you have to do is take that object or all of them and unparent them from that original stack, and that will give you an object that is now completely free of any old transforms. I'm going to scale this one down a bit just to make it thinner, and then we will rotate that around a bit. Let's put that more or less in the half and push that back in there. And what I will do now is divide this in half. We can either bevel this, these corners. Let's go to wireframe and bevel that like that, and use the fraction to really tighten up this edge. And then once we're happy with that, we can then go and looks like we need to rotate this one more like that. There we go, that's better. And grab these and make them more like what we want. And then adjust all of this. Same thing goes for here. I'm gonna line that up, this one up, grab these and move them all in line. Perfect. It is an end gun at the moment. We definitely need to adjust that accordingly. I will do that just now. I'm just gonna go ahead to my modeling toolkit, multi-cut, and then connect these corner pieces as I'm doing now. Let's do that. And same thing applies to this side. There we go. And now we have a decent looking mesh. The backside I'm not too concerned, so I don't think I'll even have faces showing on this side, unless that might be a prop that will be replaced later, so we have to delete any unnecessary faces. Once we have this, I can then go and do the further tweaking of and maybe these faces over here could be textured to look like wooden planks. And if you really want to make this much more higher poly, then you can just duplicate these original ones. However, I do think that we need to maybe adjust some of these so that they fit a little bit nicer in between here. That brings me to the point of maybe scaling them down and then trying to fit one more down there as well on the ground. Excellent. They're a bit thick, so I'm going to thin them out. Squeeze them in there. Happy with that. Maybe have it stick over a tiny bit. Delete that. And then duplicate these over as well. Excellent. Duplicate that, move it down, and tweak the spacing once again. Just do both sides at the same time. This is a very tedious thing. It's unfortunately one of those repetitive things. It's all about the artistic eye and looking at things to make it look like what we want. Do think that we need to, I think I didn't duplicate the previous one, so I have to keep that in mind. Right, that's looking good. Happy with our crate. And I'm not going to detail it too much. However, we do need to bevel these guys so that they look a little bit nicer, especially being viewed from a distance. I'm going to grab all my planks and I'm going to go to the Shift right click menu. We can use the combine over here, or we can go to the menu at the top. So once we combine these, we can then go ahead and bevel that and all the edges attached to it. So if you do, make sure I don't bevel these edges. I'm going to uncheck those and then shift right click bevel. Now it's using a bevel value that's matching the thickness or the actual scale and size of this object. So the fraction might not be the same width fraction as we had when we had a single plank selected. So sometimes you'll have to then manually force this by hand. So maybe a value of 1 is a good value for our crate. That's looking pretty good, very happy with the results, and we're going to keep it as is. Then I'm going to unisolate this and have a look at that crate. From that point, it is looking really nice. I'm happy with the shape itself, and I'm just going to maybe just pull this up a little bit more. So the pivot point is way out in the center of the world, and we want to place that in the center of this object. So let's quickly have a look at those shortcuts like I've mentioned previously. So in Maya, we have a menu called the hotkey editor. And in the hotkey editor, you can actually see all the combination keys and which ones are assigned, and which ones aren't. And over here, you can then pick your own hotkey sets and also choose the menu category for the hotkeys that you would like to adjust. So this is probably a menu item, or it could be just a custom script, other items and editors. So whichever one you go into, they will either reveal hotkeys specifically for those menus and so on. So what I want to do is actually go to the menu items, and we know that this is under modify, so we're going to open up the modify stack. We're going to go and have a look. There's the center pivot and the freeze transform. I'm going to have those guys selected, and you can see that they do not have a hotkey assigned to them yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a hotkey, and we can actually go and type and press a specific hotkey. So I'm going to hold down Alt. You can see it automatically shows you what's been assigned and which ones aren't. So I'm going to hold down C as well, or Alt and then C, and that's going to give you that name. So over here it's now saying toggle color feedback is toggle for that object, or copy the vertex skin weights. If this is something that you don't mind to be overridden, then by all means you can go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to say save. Hotkey settings have been saved. So I want to go and make sure that that has been assigned and that we have what we want. So just clear that out, delete, go back to modify, and yeah, so it doesn't look like it's been assigned yet. So we need to see how we can do that. Let's see if they've changed this quite a bit since the Maya 2013 and 14 menu set. So you just need to find a way to do it. So press key Alt and C. So it seems like it's only saying to assign or edit the hotkey, select the edit key for the options and select the desired hotkey category. Find the desired application command or run command, or use search. I'm going to hit Alt, and then this is going to be freeze or F. And it says flood surface color, so I don't mind having that there, so I can delete that. And I can then go back again to that menu, and now it's available for me to type in Alt and F. Excellent. Once that's done, I can hit save. Hotkey's been saved. I'm going to do Alt C. It says it's already assigned to the toggle color feedback. Do you want to override? Yes, I would like to override that. Perfect. So I find the Alt modifier and then the F and C is very easy to make use of. So let's continue. I'm going to save and close, and we can simply use Alt and C, and we're ready to go. Let's have a look at maybe detailing this guy. You can definitely see that we have similar kind of objects. We can either duplicate this one, or we can adjust this one as we like to maybe be slightly different. So I'm going to keep this one as is, maybe just divide this in half. I'm going to do edge, ring utilities, and split, and then do that same thing twice again, just so we have a tiny bit of adjustment. I'm going to do a manual tweak adjustment just to kind of make this more interesting, and maybe bow this shape a bit, and grab some of these points and make them not so perfect. And then finally we can go and loop select this all the way around, and let's quickly go in there, loop select that. At the back we also want to do the same thing, and I think we have all the edges. Yes, we do. And then I'm just going to do a bevel once again. So this bevel, especially being viewed from there, I do feel like we need to maybe increase the value a little bit more. So 0.3 maybe, 0.4. That seems to be very good. This is all just purely artistic, and you have to always look at your model and make judgments based on the artistry. And if it looks good from a distance as well. I made a bit of a mistake here. We need to kind of fix that. So I'll have to go back to just before we did the bevel and make sure we do not have those edges selected when we do the beveling. There we go. We have all of those. Happy with that. Bevel again. There we go. That's much better. 0.4. Right. I think I'm happy with that shape. These supports, might have to tweak them a little bit more. I do feel like they need more width at the base, just to kind of give it more a cartoony feeling. And then for this one, maybe we can alter the shape. Let's see if I can squeeze in there. There we go. It's a bit tight in here. And maybe make this one thinner, slightly different. Right, I'm happy with that. Just going through all of these. This crate is similar to this one. We might want to duplicate that and replace it there. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. Let's just continue going around these. So I've made these off screen, and this is simply just the polygon plane that's been extruded this way and then down, and then give it thickness using your extrusion tool, and then finally adding a bevel to this corner just to create these metal rods. And my file crashed previously, so we definitely need to go and tweak these again, and I'll do this just very quickly, not too many tweaks, just some basic ones. Some edges. This one definitely needs to be split in half. I'm going to hold down or press the G key to split these as well. And then we can use these points. So alternatively, just adjust some of the profile. And same thing goes for this as well. Right. Some of these adjustments. Okay. Bring these a little bit closer so they look like they're part of the same hinge. And almost there. Basic adjustments, and this is something that can be refined over time if you feel like you need more detail, more variation rather. Maybe make this one a lot thinner, and then we can even create like a single one right in between here to give it more variation. I'm going to scale this one down quite a bit, and just kind of wedge them in between here. Looking good, looking good. And there we have it. some variation. Some of these might need more thickness and some of them less thickness, so we can quickly go and adjust that as well. So I'm just going to realign my move tool to be facing the actual component, which is the face in this case. And what that allows me to do is just offset this like that. And this really does help a lot with, you know, making this piece stand out a little bit more. Having that height variation, thickness variation, and depth is really key to giving the illusion of variation. I'll grab all these edges and pull them up a bit more. That looks good. And I'm happy. These are metal rods or metal frames, keeping these intact and also giving you a little bit of a step so that you can get into this little shack much easier, and we can just keep that in mind. So here's a little carpet that I've made previously as well, and it needs a bit more adjustment to kind of match with the ground. I'm gonna pull these out a bit more and tweak that so it's not so perfect. And just, you know, tweaking the variation so it looks more like a proper, you know, little mat on the ground. Excellent. I think I'm happy with the overall progress that we've made in this video. You might want to play with some of these extra details just to make them stand out a bit more. I'm going to take this and maybe bevel that as well. Give it a higher fraction value, like 0.6 maybe. That's looking good. I'm happy with that. And then these corners we also might want to go ahead and bevel those. So I'm going to hit bevel, and once you do the bevel, you have to keep in mind that where the bevel stops and terminates and might end up creating an n-gon, and if that's the case, then you'll have to go with the multi-cut tool and then, you know, fix any n-gons that you might have. So connect those corners over there like that, and we could even limit the poly count just by doing something like this, and that's already a lot better, reducing the overall faces. Right, I'm happy with this. Let's look at this guy. This might be a little cup, looks like a little teacup or coffee cup, and sticking with the low poly kind of vibes. I do think, however, this needs a little bit more detail in terms of its width. So I'm going to grab the bottom, rather the top faces, and I'm going to scale them in just to kind of create a tapered effect. I'm going to pull this up a bit more, and then grab the top faces over here, the loop, and then scale them back out. Or maybe not too much. Either we do this. Let's make sure we move this in world space like that, and then grab the bottom ones and pull them out a bit more so it looks a lot wider. Oh, it looks like we made a bit of a mess. Might have moved these by accident previously without realizing it. Okay, that's fine. Scale that out one more time. And then we're going to add the little strip of polygons to create for the cup handle. So to do that, I'm going to do that cheat again where I select a face and do a duplicate faces, pull this off, and immediately go ahead and go into our outliner, hit F to frame it, and you can see there's the transform node. Because we duplicated from the original model, I'm going to hold down Shift Alt D, clear the history on both of these objects, and then unpair that. That means now if we do rotate this object, we can see that it's not distorting because it's not reading the old shape. That with that said, we can then go ahead and scale this down and immediately start doing some edge modeling on this object. So I'm going to pull this up, pull this in, bring this across, and then a shortcut for extruding in my 2016. If we have a look here at the edit mesh menu, we can see that under the faces, the extrude option, rather over here, is Control E. So if you hit Control E, we can immediately start pulling this out. And because that was the last command, we can keep hitting G to do the manual extrusion. And you don't have to use that long hotkey. Okay, so use only a few adjustments. Pull these out, grab these, pull them down. And I think I am happy with my cup extrusion. I can then go ahead, select all the faces, do an extrusion on it, give it some thickness, maybe inwards is better, and then I want to make sure I turn off two-sided lighting, because two-sided lighting will reveal whether the faces are reversed or not. So if I have that selected, all the faces selected, I can then go to mesh display and then simply go and reverse the face normals. And that will then point in the right direction again. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to do maybe some adjustments, or I could just keep it as is. For now, because it's such a simple prop and you're hardly ever going to really notice that too much, I'm just going to keep it as is. I'm just going to go ahead, select these and combine them so that we can go ahead and center the pivot on them using the new hotkey that we made for the center pivot, which is Alt-C. And I'm just going to rotate it because viewing from this angle, having that handle being more exposed towards the camera profile is probably a really good idea. Excellent. Let's refine some of the other props. This is like a little carpet on top of this. I'm going to use the connect tool to split this up across maybe 3 times, and use the connect tool once again to select it this way and this way. Right. I'm then going to go ahead and play with some of these points. This time I'm going to use a soft selection. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning. If you hold down the B key on the keyboard, you can actually go into soft selection mode, and if you just tap it on and off by just tapping the button, you can see it gives you a soft selection. So if you hold it down, it gives you an interactive mode to then middle mouse click and drag and give you a radius. I think the left click and drag also works. Yes, it does. And then you can use that to then kind of skew and maybe rotate and like do an overall soft selection adjustment to make this object look more organic and interesting. Let's pull that up a bit more so it doesn't stick right through that wooden panel, and I'm really liking that already. Excellent. Let's keep it like that for now. We might want to decide if we want to add thickness to it later on, but for now it's providing me exactly what I'm looking for. Further adjustments, let's have a look. These guys definitely need that bevel edge. So what I'm going to do is combine them. Isolate them first, combine, and now because it's one shape, we can then go and apply a single bevel command to all of the edges. I'm just going to turn off the soft selection by tapping B, and then Control deselect the loops going in between, as we do not want these to be beveled at all. I'm going to unselect them, and then I'm going to do the bevel. Excuse me. So once we have those edges beveled, we're going to increase the fraction until we have a good value that it gives us what we want. I'm going to use a value of 2, in fact. And we made a bit of a mistake. We have some of these that we forgot to deselect. So that's a quick fix actually. All you have to do is loop, or rather ring select that set of edges, and then we can do the shift right click, collapse, and then collapse edges. And over here we have just a single corner that needs to be adjusted accordingly, and we can do the same thing, just selecting those two edges over there, go to the shift right click menu, and then merge collapse edges, and then collapse edges. Perfect. Very quick way of fixing that problem. This looks a lot better, especially being read from a distance, and we're going in the right direction. I'm going to hit save, and we can then go and look at, I think when I saved this previously and I jumped to a new version of Maya, you sometimes get this weird bug where things are, not working out. They're almost like they're destroyed. And let's isolate this and have a look. You can definitely see that this section is destroyed. It's quite unfortunate, but many of my students have ran into this mistake or this issue, and then they had to remodel out that section. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. So what I'm going to do is we can use the curve extrusion again to fix that, and then we can adjust them. Or what we could do is just simply bridge the corners, and then we can connect them like that. So let's zoom in. I'm going to shift double click, and then shift double click there as well. I'm going to use the bridge tool, and bridge already has 5 divisions. Somehow it's warping how these are connected, so we have to, before we do that, make sure we have a clean profile or clean shape over here, and hitting or getting that fixed first is a key to making this look a lot nicer. Okay, that's looking a bit better. Much better. Right. I'm going to do one more little extrude on this guy. Extrude. Pull this out. Oh, we have the symmetry tool on, and that's why it's not responding like we want. So I'm just going to turn that off. Pull it out. Rotate that. Fix this corner. And then finally we can go ahead and bridge these guys. Bridge. That's much better. I'm happy with that. We can use the twist function to make these twist, or rather, sorry, the bridge offset, to rotate them so that the corresponding edges connect in a more cleaner directionality, and this looks much better. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that loop going around, and then I'm going to hold down B and drag this out, and then give it a little bit of a slack. As if we go back to the original model, we can see that this is supposed to kind of hang down there. So you use that to your advantage to keep track of what's actually happening here. So just temporarily, I'm going to turn on two-sided lighting so I can see the backside as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and realign these in between here. It's looking better already. These as well. And let's pull that like that. And then the same thing goes for this one. There we go. Looking good. Happy with the result. Might want to tweak some of these loops as well, to make it more realistic. Looks like I have too many loops over here, so I'm going to get rid of some of these so it's easier to manage. Right, like maybe take this one out. And I'm using the shift right click menu to get rid of that edge and vertex loop. That looks much better. Perfect. This is spaced out too far, so we can go ahead and grab these points and pull them closer, like that maybe. There we go, that's looking really good. Excellent. Let's jump to the next section. We might want to tweak some of the pieces on the rope. I think, again, when we jumped from one version of Maya to another, some of these points got a bit messed up. And unfortunately, that's one of those really nasty problems that will occur. You just have to kind of manage things and manually tweak them. Grab that, zoom in there, and jump to my tablet pen because it's a little bit easier to manage. There we go, much quicker as well. Okay, let's do a quick bridge to these guys. Let's bridge that. I'm going to reduce the division sections to 1, and then again I'm going to tweak these until they look much nicer. Let's see if I can do the bridge to these corners, going into the channel box, bridge, and then do the offset and see if we can rotate these to work a bit nicer. That seems much better. So I'm gonna rearrange these guys. There we go. That's much better. Excellent. Feels like it's flowing a little bit nicer. And maybe changing the thickness up again. Much better. I'm gonna harden the edges because I feel like they all the edges on this object stands out a bit nicer when they're hardened. We can go ahead and loop select this, so we go to the edge, just double click on it maybe, and then do an edge ring and to edge ring, and it goes ahead and loop selects all of those attached to that. We seem to have a bit of a problem happening here where they're not looping all the way through. Let's quickly check what's happening there. Yep, that's exactly what's happening. So these faces are completely messed up. So I'm just going to go ahead and do some adjustments. Right. Loop, loop, and then bridge. Reduce that to maybe 0 divisions. And a nice thing we can do is we can actually use the new edge flow tool in Maya 2016. Let's loop select this one and then edge flow. That will try and average the space this way, and we can also do the same thing using edge flow like that. Edge flow. Just be careful. Sometimes it doesn't do what you want. So then you'll have to go manually and tweak this again. Right. I think I'm happy with that. Now, because these ring edges are so harsh, I definitely want to soften them. So I'm going to loop select this and then say edge ring utilities and to edge ring, and that will convert it to the whole edge ring on the object. And then we can do shift right click, soften edges and soften edges. So now only the edges running along the length of the object is now hard, but the ones that's running along the width of it is not. Wonderful. some small tweaks still to be worked on. And I'm gonna make a little bit more space in between here. I can see what's actually happening, especially this vertex not doing what I want. And then that one also needs a bit of adjustment. There we go, that's much better. Wonderful, let's unisolate that. Let's have a look at the overall shape. That's much better, looking like it's holding out nicely. We've got some pegs in the ground. That I feel like needs to be enhanced and scaled up a lot more so it feels more cartoony. I'm going to scale it up. Looking good. And I'm going to go a little bit off reference and maybe add another string row pulling this way so it looks like it's keeping the structure intact. And so what I'm going to do is use my curve tool once again, just like I showed you guys in the previous video. So I'm going to do a simple CV curve, jump to my side view, and I'm going to go ahead, maybe click here, and then we can go out from there. Press enter, and we can use our move tool to adjust that. And I'm going to go into the components of our curve. As I'm going to press F8, rather component there, and then choose the components we want to work with. It's the CV points, and I'm going to actually pull it out this way, so it's like looks like it's tensioning to the one side of the ground plane. This makes it more interesting in my opinion and create some diagonal lines running through this object. Sweet, happy with that. I can then go ahead and use our generate curve utilities and attach brush to stroke. And then we can zoom in, we can see there's way too many sections. It's also way too thin. So I'm going to jump to my default and then brush width, increase that quite nicely to where we think it's working nice for us. And then I'm going to reduce our stroke sample density to 0.2 maybe, just so that we have the same amount of points. Maybe 0.3. There we go. 0.2 seems to give me the best result, especially at the corners. I'm going to leave it like that. Right, so we have a total number of 6 points. I'm going to reduce that to 5. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and select my Paint Effects stroke, go to Modify, Convert, and then Paint Effects to Polygons. This will then convert it to a polygon surface. I'm going to clear the history, and I'm going to go to my outliner, scroll all the way to the bottom. I don't need that stroke anymore, I can just delete it. And then finally, I don't need the curve as well. And I'm just going to reassign my old Lambert just by right clicking. Wonderful, that's looking much better. I do feel like these might be a little bit thin still. So a quick way to fix all of that is holding down Control F9 to go to the conversion of all the convert the selection into vertices. And then what I'm going to do is shift right click and say transform components. What this will do is it will allow me to transform every vertex along their own normals, and that's going to give me some nice thickness that I can use. However, here at the top I do think it needs to be a little bit thinner, so I'm just going to do manual adjustment to these guys not to be too thick, but over here we do want some thickness. Maybe these are a bit too much, just a bit too much. And it doesn't really matter if we have some variation, so we can do that. Another way to approach this is to actually have a plane and then rather texture this instead of using actual polygons. So if you're getting to a point where you're reaching too high poly count, then you might have to go ahead and use the polygon plane method. So I'm going to duplicate this peg, or this whole piece of wood or metal, and just kind of put that right in there to make it look like it's been attached over there. That's looking really nice. It really does add to the design, creating these diagonal lines. And I want to show you guys what we can do to make it look like this rope is wrapping around. I like to use a spring, and the spring primitive is under the create menu, and we can use the helix. So the helix is really nice. It has some properties to change the coil itself, the amount of rings, the thickness, and so on. So let's have a look. I'm going to jump to the channel box, go to the helix option. We can have more coils. We can hold the height, spacing. We can increase the width, and we can increase the radius as well. So looking at this, I'm going to center that around this post. Over there maybe. And we're going to increase the radius. The amount of coils I'm going to reduce. Don't want too many. The height, space them out. And maybe make the width a bit more. And the radius as well. Then we have the section going around. I'm going to reduce that down quite a bit, so maybe like 3 or 4. 3 seems to be good, or rather 4. And the number of sections going around, we're going to reduce that quite a bit to maybe like 10. Then finally, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this into position. Maybe play a little bit more with our width. I'll rotate that a bit more. And now it looks like it's been wrapped around this post quite nicely. Excellent. Over here it needs to have the same kind of thing. I'm going to duplicate that across. Place that into position. Rotate that over. Wrap that over there. Just to add a little bit more detail. I'm going to rotate this coil so it looks like it's been, let's see, like that. Bring this down maybe. I might like to inverse this as well, so I'm going to use my scale tool to rotate this -1. Just so it's a mirror of the same objects. Line that up, and then because this is so unique, I'm going to use my soft selection to pull this out maybe, and then grab my post over there, line that up over there, bring this one across to there. Okay, delete the faces over here, and then I'm going to align that. I'm almost done with this piece. I'm going to quickly go and give it some sort of a transform component thickness just to widen this up a little bit more and adjust these components, maybe line them up over there, and that seems to work pretty nice. I'm going to maybe off screen just combine them and merge the vertices, and now it feels like this connection between these are keeping the pole and the rope nice and tight, and that's helping us with the design, especially with these diagonal lines. Excellent. Thanks for watching, and in the next video we will look at some of the other props in here, refine them a little bit more, and once we're done with that we will jump on to the sculpting process, where we will start working with detailing this object in sculpting. Once we're done with that, we will start doing the UV mapping, and we will process that and bake the textures down, and then maybe use Marmoset Toolbag or even Maya's Visual Viewport 2 to kind of create a final look development. Once we're done, I'll show you guys how we can finally put everything nice together and post it online and make a really good looking profile or portfolio piece. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.